In a climate of increasing global uncertainty and domestic discontent, recent comments about Greenland have stirred a potent mixture of alarm and controversy. The narrative, punctuated by statements that some have interpreted as provocative and others as a call for strategic partnership, highlights the precarious balance between national security interests and international diplomatic norms. Diplomatic norms. At the heart of this debate lies the question of how best to secure not only the interests of the United States, but also the stability of a region long regarded as a critical fulcrum in the North Atlantic. Historically, remarks from the highest levels of government have flirted with the notion of using military force to secure strategic territories. Yet, a subtle but significant shift in tone now appears to favour a partnership model that champions the independence of Greenland, while simultaneously framing it as an indispensable ally in maintaining regional security. This evolving discourse was underscored by recent comments from Vance, a prominent voice within the administration, and his articulation clearly distances the current approach from the overt threat of military intervention, instead emphasising that military force, while not entirely ruled out, is unlikely to be necessary. Instead, the administration is positioning itself to bolster Greenland's security through cooperative measures, a strategy it claims will benefit the people of Greenland, as well as enhance US and global security. J.D. Vance's argument is built on the assertion that Greenland holds significant strategic value. According to him, the territory is not only central to the security of the United States, but also plays a critical role in the stability of the broader international order. He argues that if the people of Greenland are willing to forge a closer partnership with the United States, then their security and economic prospects could be greatly enhanced. This, he suggests, is a mutually beneficial arrangement that would provide robust protection for Greenland, while simultaneously ensuring that the United States can maintain a crucial strategic foothold in the Arctic and North Atlantic regions. Central to Vance's position is a pointed critique of Denmark, the nation traditionally responsible for Greenland's governance and defence. He contends that Denmark has fallen short in safeguarding the territory, implying that the island's current state of vulnerability presents an unacceptable risk. In this view, the failure of Denmark to maintain adequate security measures leaves a void that, if left unaddressed, could expose the region to the influence of other global powers. According to Vance, the alternative is a scenario where the North Atlantic and Arctic regions are ceded to adversaries such as Russia and China, regimes that, in his estimation, do not prioritize the security or interests of the American table. The implications of this argument extend far beyond the confines of Greenland itself. Critics argue that the rhetoric employed by figures like J.D. Vance reflects a broader pattern of strategic overreach, where aggressive posturing on the international stage is used to mask significant domestic challenges. Senator Mark Kelly, for example, has openly criticised the administration's stance, suggesting that the assertion that military force is off the table is, paradoxically, an admission that it remains a possibility. Kelly contends that if such force were ever to be considered, it would set a dangerous precedent, one that could undermine the United States' reputation as a staunch ally of democratic nations worldwide. In his view, the administration's approach risks alienating key partners at a time when robust alliances are more crucial than ever for ensuring collective security. This debate is occurring against a backdrop of profound domestic uncertainty. Economic indicators, including stock market performance, the stability of retirement savings, and consumer sentiment, have all been under severe pressure. In a climate where Americans are already grappling with rising costs of living and diminishing confidence in government institutions, the prospect of any talk that even remotely hints at territorial expansion through force appears particularly jarring. Critics have seized on these contradictions, arguing that the administration's focus on external threats and aggressive foreign policy is a diversion from its failure to address urgent internal issues. The administration's handling of foreign policy has been a subject of intense scrutiny since the early days of its tenure. That strategy, often marked by unorthodox decisions and a willingness to upend established diplomatic protocols, has led some observers to question its overall coherence. Instances such as the negotiation of concessions in the Ukrainian conflict without direct representation from Ukraine itself and the appointment of controversial figures in key security roles have only deepened these concerns. Notably, the administration has been accused of transforming its closest allies into adversaries while cozying up to regimes that are traditionally seen as antagonistic to American interests. This duality is epitomized by the stark contrast between domestic policy failures such as economic mismanagement and administrative overreach and the aggressive posturing seen in its international rhetoric. Critics point out that the Trump administration has repeatedly prioritized the projection of power over the practical governance of the nation. References to the manipulation of international dynamics, including the leveraging of adversarial relationships for political gain, underscore a strategy that appears more focused on bolstering a legacy of assertiveness than on delivering tangible benefits to American citizens. Such criticisms are not new. They have been voiced by commentators who highlight the incongruity between the administration's domestic performance and its ambitious foreign policy ambitions. The contention is that, while the rhetoric of securing strategic territories like Greenland may seem compelling in theory, the reality is that the US government has struggled to address basic economic and infrastructural challenges at home. Within this context, the debate over Greenland becomes emblematic of a larger ideological divide. On one side are those who view any threat, even an implied one, against sovereign nations as antithetical to the principles of democracy and international cooperation. On the other, proponents argue that in an era of heightened global competition, such measures are not only justified but necessary to safeguard national interests. J.D. Vance's argument rests on the premise that Greenland's security is intrinsically linked to the safety of the United States. Yet, this position has provoked fierce opposition among those who fear that embracing such a strategy could alienate valuable allies and destabilize an already fragile international order. The implications for US foreign policy are profound. If the administration's approach is accepted, it could signal a willingness to pursue a form of strategic expansionism that many find deeply unsettling. The notion that the United States might one day consider annexing territories or imposing its will on sovereign nations in the name of national security is a departure from long-standing democratic norms. Such a shift would not only have immediate geopolitical repercussions, but could also fundamentally alter the nature of international alliances. As critics have noted, a United States that appears ready to employ force or coercion against even its traditional allies risks isolating itself at a time when global collaboration is essential for addressing multifaceted challenges, from climate change to economic instability. Moreover, the domestic ramifications of this strategy are equally troubling. Voters who supported the administration with the expectation of tangible economic relief and improved governance now find themselves confronted with policies that seem to prioritize grandiose foreign ambitions over the practical needs of everyday Americans. Rising living costs, a faltering stock market, and diminishing public services stand in stark contrast to the administration's claims of enhancing national security through strategic partnerships. The disconnect between these promises and the lived reality of American citizens has fueled a growing sense of disenchantment, a sentiment that, if left unaddressed, could have lasting consequences for the nation's political landscape. In closing, the debate over Greenland encapsulates a critical crossroads for American policy, one where the pursuit of global influence risks undermining the very foundations of domestic stability and democratic governance. The administration's insistence on securing Greenland as a strategic asset, couched in the language of security and partnership, must be weighed against the backdrop of significant internal challenges. As the United States navigates this complex terrain, it is incumbent upon both policymakers and the public to critically assess whether such an approach serves the long-term interests of the nation. The current discourse serves as a stark reminder that true security cannot be achieved through unilateral posturing alone. It requires a balanced commitment to both international alliances and domestic well-being. For the citizens of Greenland, Panama, Canada, and other nations that might be caught in the crossfire of this contentious policy, the message is clear. The fate of these regions should not be determined by the whims of a political leadership that appears more intent on expanding its own influence than on ensuring lasting peace and prosperity. As debates continue to rage in the corridors of power, it is essential that the American people remain vigilant and hold their government accountable. The call for a more measured and collaborative foreign policy is not merely a political slogan. It is a necessity for safeguarding the values upon which this nation was built. In these challenging times, the importance of independent media and informed public discourse cannot be overstated. But it is through thoughtful, critical examination of policies like those concerning Greenland that a more secure and prosperous future can be charted, one that truly serves the interests of all people, both at home and abroad.